Jake Morrison stood at his kitchen window watching the dark clouds roll across the Montana sky. The weatherman on the radio had been talking about a big storm coming for 3 days now. Jake could feel it in his bones too. The air was heavy and cold, and his cattle were acting restless in the pasture. He picked up the folded newspaper from his kitchen table and read the ad he had placed 3 weeks ago. Experienced cook needed for remote cattle ranch. Room and board included. Contact Morrison Ranch. So far, nobody had called. Jake was starting to think nobody ever would. The ranch was too far from town for most people. 15 miles of dirt road separated him from his nearest neighbor, and the main highway was another 10 miles past that. People wanted jobs where they could go home at night, not jobs that kept them stuck on a lonely ranch with a man they didn't know. Jake was 42 years old. He had been running the ranch alone since his father died 2 years ago. Before that, his mother had done all the cooking and cleaning. She had died when Jake was 25, and his father had learned to cook simple meals for them both. But his father was never very good at it. He ate a lot of beans and sandwiches. Now, Jake was eating even worse. Most nights he opened a can of something and ate it cold. Sometimes he made scrambled eggs or heated up soup. He was getting tired of living like this, but he didn't know what else to do. The ranch took up all his time. He had 200 head of cattle to take care of, plus horses, chickens, and all the buildings and fences that always needed fixing. The wind was picking up outside. Jake could hear it whistling around the corners of the house. He had already brought the horses into the barn and made sure the cattle had shelter. The chickens were safe in their coop. Everything was ready for the storm. Jake thought about Mrs. Collins, the woman who came from town twice a week to clean his house and do his laundry. She was 65 years old and had been helping his family for 10 years. But she couldn't drive in bad weather anymore, and she had called that morning to say she wouldn't be coming until the storm passed. He opened the refrigerator and looked inside. There was some milk, a few eggs, and half a loaf of bread. In the pantry, he had cans of beans, soup, and some crackers. It would be enough to get through a few days if the storm was as bad as they said it would be. The first snowflakes started falling around 4 in the afternoon. Jake watched from his living room window as they got bigger and thicker. The wind was blowing harder now, making the snow swirl and dance. By 5 o'clock, he could barely see the barn from the house. Jake made himself a sandwich and sat down to watch the news. The weatherman was excited about the storm, kept talking about how much snow they were going to get and how dangerous the roads would be. Jake turned off the television and tried to read a book, but he couldn't focus on the words. The house felt too quiet and too big. It had 5 bedrooms, but Jake only used one. There was a big dining room where his family used to eat together, but now Jake ate his meals standing at the kitchen counter. Sometimes he thought about selling the ranch and moving to town, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. This land had been in his family for 3 generations. Around 8 o'clock, the electricity went out. Jake had been expecting it. He lit some candles and got out his battery-powered radio. The storm was supposed to last until morning, maybe longer. He was settling in for a long, dark night when he heard something over the sound of the wind. It sounded like someone knocking on his door. Jake stood still and listened. There it was again. Someone was definitely knocking, but it was hard to hear over the storm. Who would be out in weather like this? He grabbed a flashlight and walked to the front door. Through the glass, he could see a dark shape hunched against the wind. The person was small and seemed to be holding something. Jake unlocked the door and pulled it open. A young woman stumbled forward, almost falling into his house. She was soaked through and shivering so hard she could barely stand. Her dark hair was plastered to her face, and her lips were blue with cold. In her arms, she was holding a baby wrapped in a wet blanket. "Please," she said through chattering teeth. "The car broke down. I saw your light." Jake looked past her and saw an old car sitting in his driveway. Steam was rising from under the hood and snow was already piling up on the windshield. The woman swayed on her feet, and Jake realized she was about to collapse. "Come in," he said, reaching out to steady her. "Come in right now." The woman stepped inside, dripping water on his floor. The baby in her arms was crying, a thin, weak sound that made Jake's heart hurt. He could see that both the mother and child were in bad shape. I'm so sorry, the woman said. I didn't know where else to go. I've been driving for hours. And then my car just died. Don't worry about that now, Jake said. He closed the door against the wind and snow. You need to get warm and dry, both of you. In the candlelight, Jake could see the woman more clearly. She looked to be in her mid-20s, with brown eyes and dark hair. She was thin, maybe too thin, and there was something scared in the way she looked around his house. I'm Jake Morrison, he said. This is my ranch. What's your name?
Lucy,
She said quietly. Lucy Bennett. And this is my son, Danny. The baby Danny was still crying. Lucy tried to rock him, but her hands were shaking too much from the cold. Let me help you, Jake said. He had never been around babies much, but he could see that this one needed help fast. We need to get you both warm and dry before you get sick. Lucy nodded, but Jake could see she was having trouble thinking clearly. The cold and exhaustion had taken too much out of her. He guided her toward the living room where the fireplace was still giving off heat. As they walked, Jake noticed something that made him frown. There were dark marks around Lucy's wrists like bruises. When he moved too quickly to help her, she flinched away from him. Jake had a feeling that this young woman and her baby were running from more than just the storm. Outside, Jake helped Lucy to the big chair near the fireplace. She sank into it with a soft sigh, still holding baby Danny close to her chest. The little boy had stopped crying, but Jake could see he was still upset. His tiny face was red and blotchy. From the cold, you need to get out of those wet clothes, Jake said gently. I'll get you some blankets and something dry to wear. Lucy looked up at him with worried eyes. I don't want to be any trouble. If you could just let me warm up for a few minutes, I'll try to get my car running again. Jake shook his head. Car isn't going anywhere tonight, and neither are you. Look outside. Through the living room window, they could see the snow coming down harder than ever. The wind was howling like a wild animal, and everything outside was white. Jake had lived on this ranch his whole life, and he had never seen a storm this bad. Roads will be blocked for days, he said. Even if your car was running, you couldn't drive in this. Lucy's face went pale. Days. But I have to keep going. I have to get to Seattle. Seattle. That's a long way from here. What's in Seattle, my sister? Lucy said quietly. Doesn't know I'm coming, but she's the only family I have left. Jake could hear something in her voice that made him want to ask more questions, but he could see she was exhausted. The baby was starting to fuss again, and Lucy looked like she was about to cry herself.
what would I?
Why we kind of wait why with I can I when why can't one I quite like I quite to quite I kai I grave kai I quite I die kai I quite I kai what we when I
Said, then we can talk. He went upstairs to his bedroom and found some of his smallest clothes. His father had been a small man, and Jake still had some of his old shirts and pants. They would be too big for Lucy, but they would be warm and dry. When he came back downstairs, Lucy was trying to feed the baby with a bottle, but her hands were shaking so much she could barely hold it steady. Danny was crying harder now, a desperate sound that made Jake's chest tight. Here, Jake said, setting the clothes on the couch. Let me help. He took the bottle from Lucy's trembling hands and gently offered it to Danny. The baby grabbed it eagerly and started drinking. Jake had helped bottle feed calves before, but holding this tiny human baby felt completely different. Thank you, Lucy whispered. I haven't eaten anything since yesterday morning. I think that's why I'm so shaky. Jake looked at her with concern. You haven't eaten in a whole day? Why not? Lucy's cheeks turned red. I spent my last $20 on formula for Danny. I was hoping to make it to Seattle before I ran out of money. Jake felt angry, but not at Lucy. He was angry at whatever situation had put this young mother and her baby in such a desperate spot. Well, you don't have to worry about that now. I've got plenty of food here. He helped Lucy stand up and showed her to the bathroom so she could change into the dry clothes. While she was gone, Jake held Danny and walked around the living room. The baby seemed to like the movement, and his crying stopped. Jake studied the little boy's face in the firelight. Danny had dark hair like his mother and big brown eyes. He was small and thin, but he seemed healthy. Jake guessed he was maybe 6 months old. When Lucy came back, she was wearing Jake's father's old flannel shirt and a pair of pants that she had to roll up at the bottom. The clothes were much too big for her, but she looked warmer and more comfortable. "You," she said, reaching for Danny. "You're very kind." Jake handed the baby back to her. "Are you hungry? I can make you something to eat. I don't want to be any trouble." "You're not trouble," Jake said firmly. "You're my guest. Guests get fed." He went to the kitchen and started making soup. It was canned soup. Nothing fancy, but it was hot and filling. He also made some sandwiches and coffee we brought. The food to the living room, Lucy ate like she hadn't seen food in weeks. "This is delicious," she said between bites. "I can't remember the last time I had a hot meal." Jake sat down across from her and watched her eat. She was trying to be polite and eat slowly, but he could see she was starving. "Take your time. There's plenty more."
Yes.
Lucy ate. Jake noticed more things that worried him. Besides the bruises on her wrists, there was a fading mark on her cheek that looked like someone had hit her. She kept looking toward the windows as if she was expecting someone to appear outside. "Lucy," Jake said carefully, "are you in some kind of trouble?" Lucy stopped eating and looked down at her hands. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Danny was sleeping in her arms, peaceful and warm. "I'm running away," she said finally. "From my husband." Jake felt his jaw tightened. "Did he hurt you?" Lucy nodded, tears starting to fall down her cheeks. "He's been hurting me for 2 years. But when he started threatening Danny, I knew I had to leave." "Where is he now?" "Colorado. At least, I hope he's still in Colorado. I took Danny and left while he was at work 3 days ago. I've been driving ever since, trying to get as far away as possible." Jake leaned forward in his chair. "Does he know where you're going?" "No. He doesn't even know I have a sister. I never told him about Lisa because I was afraid he would try to hurt her too." "What's his name? Carl Bennett?" Lucy's voice got quiet. When she said the name, like she was afraid just saying it would make him appear. Jake had never met Carl Bennett, but he already hated him. Any man who would hurt a woman and threaten a baby was no man at all in Jake's book. Well, Carl Bennett isn't going to find you here, Jake said. "This storm will keep everyone away for at least a few days. And even after the road's clear, this ranch is hard to find if you don't know where you're looking." Lucy looked up at him with hope in her eyes. "You'll really let us stay? As long as you need to," Jake said. "I've got plenty of room, and it gets lonely out here by myself, but I can't pay you anything. I don't have any money left." Jake waved his hand. "I'm not asking for money. But if you want to earn your keep, I could use some help around here. I've been living on canned beans and cold sandwiches for 2 years." For the first time since she had arrived, Lucy smiled. It was a small smile, but it made her whole face look different. "I used to work as a cook," she said, "before I got married. I'm pretty good at it." "Then it's settled," Jake said. "Danny can stay here as long as you want. In return, maybe you can teach me how to cook something besides beans." Outside, the storm continued to rage. But inside the warm house, Jake felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. It felt like he had a purpose again. Jake woke up to the smell of bacon cooking. For a moment, he lay in bed, confused. He hadn't cooked bacon in months. Then he remembered Lucy and Danny, and he smiled. The storm had stopped during the night, and weak sunlight was coming through his bedroom window. He got dressed quickly and went downstairs. In the kitchen, Lucy was standing at the stove wearing his mother's old apron. She had found it in the pantry, and it fit her much better than his father's clothes. Danny was sitting in a high chair that Jake didn't even remember they had. Lucy must have found it in the basement. "Good morning," Lucy said, turning to smile. At him, she looked much better after a good night's sleep. Her hair was clean and brushed, and the scared look in her eyes was gone. "I hope you don't mind that I started breakfast, mind? This is the best thing that's happened to me in 2 years," Jake said, breathing in the wonderful smells. "Where did you find all this food?" "And more than you thought," Lucy said, flipping. "Pancakes on the griddle, found pancake mix in your pantry, and there were eggs and bacon in the refrigerator. I also found some frozen orange juice." Jake sat down at the kitchen table and watched her work. Lucy moved around the kitchen like she belonged there. She knew exactly what she was doing, and everything smelled amazing. "I made extra batter," she said, putting a plate of pancakes in front of him. "I thought you might be hungry after dealing with unexpected guests." Jake took a bite of the pancakes and closed his eyes. They were light and fluffy, nothing like the flat, heavy ones he made from a box. "These are incredible. I haven't had pancakes this good since my mother died." Lucy blushed and poured him a cup of coffee. "It's nothing special, just a recipe my grandmother taught me." "Well, your grandmother was a smart woman." They ate breakfast together while Danny played with small pieces of pancake. The baby was much happier this morning, babbling and smiling at Jake. Every time Jake looked at him, Danny would giggle and clap his hands. "He likes you," Lucy said, watching them. "Danny doesn't usually warm up to strangers so quickly." "I like him too," Jake said, making a funny face that made Danny laugh. "How old is he? 7 months? He started crawling last week, so I have to watch him every second now." After breakfast, Jake bundled up and went outside to check on his animals. The storm had left 3 feet of snow everywhere, and the wind had blown it into huge drifts. His truck was completely buried. He couldn't even see the road. The cattle were fine in their shelter, and the horses were warm in the barn. Jake spent an hour shoveling paths between the buildings. By the time he came back inside, he was cold and tired. Lucy had cleaned the entire kitchen and was now working in the living room with Danny playing on a blanket near the fireplace. She had dusted all the furniture and swept the floor. The house looked better than it had in months. "You don't have to do all this," Jake said, pulling off his boots. "I said you could stay here, not that you had to be my maid." "I want to help," Lucy said. "You saved our lives last night. This is the least I can do." Jake sat down on the couch and watched Danny crawl around on the blanket. The baby was fascinated by everything, picking up toys and putting them in his mouth. "Lucy, can I ask you something?" She stopped dusting and looked at him nervously. "What? How did you end up married to someone like Carl?" Lucy was quiet for a long time. She sat down in the chair across from Jake and picked up Danny, holding him in her lap. "I was 18 when I met him," she said finally. "I was working at a diner in Denver, and he came in every day for lunch. He was handsome and charming, and he made me feel special. I had never had a boyfriend before. What happened? Everything was perfect for the first few months. Carl was sweet and romantic. He brought me flowers and took me to nice restaurants. When he asked me to marry him, I said yes right away." Jake could see this was hard for her to talk about, but he wanted to understand. "The problems started after we got married," Lucy continued. "Carl began drinking more and more. When he drank, he got angry about everything. At first, he just yelled at me. Then he started pushing me around. 'Why didn't you leave then?' Tried to a few times. But Carl always found me and convinced me to come back. He would cry and promise to change. He would be good for a few weeks, and I would think things were getting better. Then something would set him off again." Danny reached up and touched his mother's face, as if he could sense her sadness. Lucy kissed his little hand and smiled at him. "When I found out I was pregnant, I thought maybe having a baby would change Carl. For a while it did. He was excited about becoming a father. But after Danny was born, things got worse than ever." "What finally made you leave?" Lucy's voice got very quiet. "Last week, Carl came home drunk and angry because he had lost his job. Danny was crying and Carl screamed at him to shut up. When Danny kept crying, Carl raised his hand like he was going to hit him. Jake felt his hands clench into fists. "What did you do?" "I grabbed Danny and locked us in the bedroom. Al pounded on the door for an hour, yelling that he was going to teach us both a lesson. The next morning, he acted like nothing had happened. but I knew I couldn't stay. I couldn't let him hurt my baby, so you left while he was at work. I packed one bag and took Danny to the car. I had been saving a little money from the grocery budget for months, hiding it in Danny's diaper bag. It wasn't much, but it was enough to buy gas and formula. Jake looked at this brave young woman holding her baby, and he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He felt protective. He wanted to make sure nothing bad ever happened to Lucy and Danny again. "You're safe now," he said. "Carl will never find you here." "But I can't stay forever," Lucy said. "I need to find a job and a place to live. I need to start over somewhere. What if I offered you a job?" Lucy looked at him in surprise. "What kind of job?" "I need a cook and a housekeeper. The pay wouldn't be much, but you'd have a place to live and all the food you could eat. Danny would be safe and warm. You would really do that." "Lucy, I've been eating cold beans out of a can for 2 years. After this morning's breakfast, I never want to eat another cold meal again. And this house is too big and too quiet for just one person." Lucy looked around the living room, then down at Danny, who was falling asleep in her arms. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it," Jake said. "You don't have to decide right now. Stay here until the road's clear and then see how you feel." "Okay," Lucy said softly. "I'll think about it." But Jake could see in her eyes that she had already decided. For the first time in months, Lucy looked like she might have found a home. 3 weeks had passed since the storm brought Lucy and Danny to Jake's ranch. The snow had melted enough for the roads to open, but Lucy showed no signs of wanting to leave. She had settled into life at the ranch like she had always belonged. There every morning, Jake woke up to the smell of fresh coffee and breakfast cooking. Lucy had taken over the kitchen completely, and Jake had never eaten so well in his life. She made everything from scratch: bread, pies, stews that simmered all day, and filled the house with wonderful smells. Danny was thriving too. The little boy had grown attached to Jake, crawling after him around the house and clapping his hands whenever Jake came in from outside. Jake had moved an old crib down from the attic and set it up in Lucy's room. He had also child-proofed the house, putting locks on cabinets and covering electrical outlets. This morning was different, though. Gosh, Jake could tell something was wrong the moment he walked into the kitchen. Lucy was standing at the window holding Danny tight against her chest. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking. "What's wrong?" Jake asked, moving to stand beside her. Lucy pointed toward the road. "There's a car coming up the driveway. A blue pickup truck." Jake looked out the window and saw the truck slowly making its way up the long dirt road to the house. It was moving carefully, like the driver wasn't sure where he was going. "Do you know who it is?" Jake asked. Lucy's voice was barely a whisper. "Carl drives a blue pickup truck." Jake felt his blood run cold. "Are you sure it's him? I can't tell from here." "But what if it is? What if he found us?" Jake put his hand on Lucy's shoulder. "Even if it is Carl, he can't make you go with him. You're safe here." The truck pulled up in front of the house and stopped. Jake watched as a man got out. He was tall and broad, with dark hair and a heavy beard. He looked around the ranch with angry eyes, like he was looking for a fight. "It's him," Lucy whispered. "It's Carl." Jake felt Lucy trembling beside him. Danny must have sensed his mother's fear because he started to whimper. "Take Danny upstairs," Jake said quietly. "Go to my father's old room at the back of the house. Lock the door and don't come out until I tell you it's safe." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to talk to him." Lucy grabbed Jake's arm. "No, he's dangerous, Jake. When he's angry, he doesn't think straight. He might hurt you." "He's not going to hurt anybody," Jake said firmly. "This is my land, and you're under my protection now." Lucy looked into Jake's eyes and saw something there that made her feel a little safer. Jake was not like Carl. Jake was steady and strong, and he wouldn't let fear control him. "Be careful," she whispered, then hurried upstairs with Danny. Jake waited until he heard the bedroom door close and lock. Then he took a deep breath and walked to the front door. Carl was already on the porch, raising his fist to knock. Jake opened the door before Carl could knock. The two men looked at each other for a moment. Carl was bigger than Jake had expected, but Jake could smell alcohol on his breath, even though it was only 10 in the morning. "You Jake Morrison?" Carl asked. "That's right. Looking for my wife, Lucy Bennett. Someone in town said they saw a woman with a baby come out this way during the storm." Jake kept his face calm. I don't know anyone by that name. Carl's eyes narrowed. Don't lie to me, old man. I know she's here. Her car broke down 3 weeks ago, and the tow truck driver said he pulled it out of this driveway. Jake cursed silently. He had forgotten about Lucy's car. The tow truck had taken it to the garage in town for repairs, but Carl must have tracked it down. A woman's car did break down here during the storm, Jake said carefully. But she left. The next day, when the roads cleared, where did she go? I don't know. She didn't say. Carl stepped closer to Jake, and Jake could see the anger building in his eyes. You're lying. Lucy doesn't have anywhere else to go. If she came here, she's still here. I'm telling you she left, Jake said, not backing down. Should leave too. Carl laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. I'm not going anywhere without my wife and kid. They belong to me. People don't belong to other people, Jake said quietly. Lucy is my wife. That baby is my son. I have every right to take them home. Not if they don't want to go. Carl's face turned red with anger. What do you know about it? Lucy's probably filling your head with lies about me. She's good at that. She makes herself look like the victim. But she's the one who causes all the problems. Jake had heard enough. I think you need to leave my property now. I'm not leaving without Lucy. Yes, you are. Carl reached into his jacket, and Jake tensed, wondering if the man had a weapon. But Carl just pulled out a cell phone. Calling the police, Carl said. I'm reporting my wife and child is missing. They'll search this place and find her. Go. Ahead and call, Jake said. But the police can't make a grown woman go somewhere she doesn't want to go. Carl stared at Jake for a long moment, then put his phone away. Fine, I'll find another way. He turned and walked back toward his truck, but instead of getting in, he walked around the house, looking in windows. Jake followed him, staying close. Get off my property, Jake said, when Carl tried to look in the kitchen window. I know she's in there, Carl shouted toward the house. Lucy, you come out here right now. You're coming home with me whether you like it or not. Upstairs, Jake could hear Danny starting to cry. Carl heard it too, and his face lit up with satisfaction. There's my boy, Carl said, heading for the front door. Lucy, bring Danny down here now. Jake stepped in front of Carl, blocking his path. You're not going in my house. Try and stop me. Carl shoved Jake hard, trying to push past him. Jake stumbled backward, but quickly regained his balance. He had been doing ranch work his whole life, and he was stronger than he looked. I'm warning you, Jake said. Leave now, or I'll call the sheriff. You think some small-town sheriff scares me? Carl swung his fist at Jake's face. Jake ducked and grabbed Carl's arm, using the bigger man's momentum to throw him off balance. Carl stumbled and fell hard on the porch steps. You'll pay for that, Carl snarled, getting to his feet. But before he could make another move, they both heard the sound of sirens in the distance. Someone was coming up the road fast. Carl looked toward the sound, then back at Jake. This isn't over, he said. Lucy is my wife, and that baby is my son. I'll be back for them. He walked to his truck and got in, but he didn't drive away. Instead, he sat there watching the house, waiting to see who was coming. Jake hoped it was the sheriff. I had a feeling they were going to need help. The sheriff's car pulled up behind Carl's truck, and Jake felt relief wash over him. Sheriff Pat Williams got out of the car slowly, his hand resting on his gun belt. Pat was 60 years old and had been keeping the peace in this county for 20 years. He knew how to handle trouble. Morning, Jake, Pat said, walking toward the porch. Got a call from Tom Mitchell. He said he saw someone driving erratically on the county road and thought there might be trouble. Jake glanced toward his neighbor's property. Tom lived a mile away, but he had a clear view of the road from his house. Jake made a mental note. To thank Tom later, this is Carl Bennett, Jake said, nodding toward the man standing by the blue truck. He's been threatening me and trying to force his way into my house. Pat looked at Carl with careful eyes. That true, Mr. Bennett? Carl straightened up and tried to look innocent. I'm just looking for my wife and son, Sheriff. They went missing 3 weeks ago, and I have reason to believe they're here. Missing persons case? Pat asked. Why haven't you filed a report? Carl's face flushed red. I've been looking for them myself. I didn't want to get the law involved, unless I had to. Pat nodded slowly, but Jake could see he didn't believe Carl's story. Well, you're involved now, Mr. Morrison. Do you know anything about Mr. Bennett's missing family? Jake chose his words carefully. A woman and baby did take shelter here during the big storm 3 weeks ago. But she's not missing, Sheriff. She's here by choice. I want to see her, Carl demanded. I want to talk to my wife. That's up to her, Pat said firmly. If she's here and she's safe, then there's no crime. But if she doesn't want to see you, you'll have to respect that. Carl's hands clenched into fists. She's my wife. I have rights. You have the right to remain silent, Pat said quietly. And I suggest you use it before you say something that gets you arrested. Jake stepped forward. Sheriff, would you like to come inside? You can talk to Lucy and find out what she wants to do. That sounds like a good idea. As they walked toward the front door, Carl followed behind them. I'm coming too, he said. Pat stopped and turned around. No, you're not. You can wait by your truck. Can't keep me from seeing my own wife. I can if she doesn't want to see you, Pat said. And right now, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Inside the house, Jake called upstairs. Lucy, it's safe to come down. The sheriff is here. They heard footsteps on the stairs, and then Lucy appeared, carrying Danny in her arms. She looked scared but determined. When she saw Sheriff Williams, she relaxed a little. Hello, ma'am, Pat said gently. I'm Sheriff Williams. Are you Lucy? Bennett. Yes, sir. Your husband is outside.
Ow.
He says you and your son are missing. Is that true? Lucy shook her head. I'm not missing. I left him 3 weeks ago, and I don't want to go back. Why did you leave? Lucy looked at Jake, who nodded encouragingly. Carl has been hurting me for 2 years. He drinks too much, and when he drinks, he gets violent. Last week, he threatened to hurt Danny. That's when I knew I had to leave. Pat pulled out a small notebook and started writing. Has he ever hit you before? Many times. Lucy shifted Danny to one arm and rolled up her sleeves, showing Pat that fading bruises on her wrists and arms. These are from the last time. Did you ever call the police? Lucy's voice got quiet. Once. But when the officers came, Carl convinced them it was just a misunderstanding. He can be very charming when he wants to be. After they left, he hurt me worse than ever. He said if I ever called the police again, he would kill me. Jake felt anger burning in his chest. He wanted to go outside and teach Carl Bennett a lesson he would never forget. What do you want to do now? Pat asked Lucy. I want to stay here with Jake. He's been good to us. Danny is safe here, and I'm safe here. And you, Mr. Morrison? You okay with that arrangement? More than okay, Jake said. Lucy and Danny are welcome to stay as long as they want. Pat closed his notebook. Then it's settled. Mrs. Bennett, you're an adult, and you have the right to live wherever you choose. Your husband has no legal right to force you to go with him. But what if he comes back? Lucy asked. What if he tries to take Danny? I'm going to have a talk with Mr. Bennett right now. I'm going to make it very clear that if he comes near this property again, he'll be arrested for trespassing and harassment. They walked back outside together. Carl was pacing by his truck like a caged animal. When he saw Lucy, his face lit up. With fake happiness, Lucy, honey, he called out. There you are. Come on, let's go home. I've been worried sick about you. Lucy stayed close to Jake and didn't move. I'm not going with you, Carl. Carl's fake smile disappeared. What do you mean? I'm your husband. That's my son. You threatened to hurt Danny, Lucy said, her voice getting stronger. I will never let you near him again. I was drunk. I didn't mean it. You've been drunk a lot lately, Lucy replied. You've hurt me a lot lately. I'm done, Carl. I want a divorce. Carl's face turned ugly with rage. You can't divorce me. I'll never let you go. Sheriff Williams stepped between Carl and Lucy. Mr. Bennett, you need to calm down. Your wife has made her choice, and you need to respect it. This is none of your business. It became my business when you started making threats, Pat said firmly. Now, I'm going to give you 2 choices. You can get in your truck and drive away peacefully, or I can arrest you right now for harassment and disturbing the peace. Carl looked from the sheriff to Jake to Lucy, his face red with anger. "This isn't over," he said to Lucy. "You're still my wife, and Danny is still my son. I'll find a way to get you back." "Oh, you won't," Jake said, stepping forward. "If you ever set foot on my property again, I'll be ready for you." Carl stared at Jake for a long moment, then got in his truck and slammed the door. He drove away fast, spinning his tires and throwing gravel. Sheriff Williams stayed for another hour, helping Lucy fill out paperwork for a restraining order. He also gave Jake his home phone number and told him to call if Carl came back. After the sheriff left, Jake and Lucy sat on the porch watching Danny play in the grass. The spring air was warm and peaceful, and it was hard to believe that just an hour ago they had been facing Carl's anger. "Thank you," Lucy said quietly, "for protecting us, for standing up to him." "You don't have to thank me," Jake replied. "This is your home now, both of you." Lucy looked at him with tears in her eyes. "I've never had anyone fight for me before." "Well, you do now." That evening, as they sat down to dinner together, Jake realized that his lonely ranch house had become something he had never expected. It had become a home filled with laughter and love. Lucy had found safety and peace. Danny had found a father figure who would protect him. Jake had found the family he never knew he was looking for. Outside, the sun was setting over the Montana mountains, painting the sky orange and pink. Inside, three people who had found each other by chance were building something beautiful together, a new beginning that would last a lifetime.